All right, we are live on the Las Vegas Triathlon Club Facebook page. We're recording. I'm John Mercer, president of the Las Vegas Tri Club. Got board member Bob Gamble here, co-host back
Hey,
on
folks.
the show. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Glad to be back here doing this again.
Yeah, nice to have you back. And if people look over Bob's shoulder, you'll see he's got the oven running there because he's got some type of concoction
Yes,
cooking
I'm
back
making
there.
I'm making Greek shrimp. Now that I'm retired, I have a lot of cooking duties. Have it ready for my wife when she gets in.
All right, I love it. Well, like I said before, I know where you live, so maybe I can swing over and get a little bit. So, hey, tonight I'm really excited to hear from Maria Dellett. This is going to be fun because Maria, she moved down from Seattle, and I'm not going to steal too much of your material, Bob, but she moved
Oh
down from
yeah.
Seattle, and prior to this, we were reminiscing about living up in the Northwest and the lovely rain, which was fun at times, and then it's nice to be in a sunny Southwest area. But I remember Maria moved down here from Seattle and reached out to the club and got involved right away, and it's been great to have her in the club. And she is one of two people who was able to do all four of our events this year. So exciting that she was able to do that. And I will have to say I sort of had to twist her arm on the last one because she was being very polite and said, well, I've done all the events. I don't want to take someone else's spot. I said, no, no, no. And I didn't want to tell her then that she was one of two people who did all four. And I'm like, you got to come and do this fourth one so we can give you something for a little
That's
prize.
why they are club races.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you for being engaged with the club. Thanks for jumping in, both feet with the club. It's been great to have you in. But I'm actually going to turn it over to Bob for the official start and official introduction.
Thank you, and welcome, Maria. And we're really glad to have Maria on here tonight because, as John said, Maria is one of two people who has done all four club races, and with a triathlon club, the members who come out and do the events that we sponsor are the core and the foundation of the club. So we are really happy to have Maria on here to actually thank her for what she's doing and recognize for the fact that she's so involved in the club. Maria has been with the club for only since last year. She recently moved down from Seattle, but she's not new to triathlons. She's done. I like the fact that she has lost count. She says between 15 and 20 triathlons, from sprints to 70.3s, and we're going to ask you all about these. And with a couple of half Ironmen in there. Started about 7 years ago, right? About
Yeah.
7 years ago. I've been with the club for a little over a year now. So it's really wonderful to have you here. You're a core member. And thanks again for doing all four of our races. So just to get started, how did you get started? How did you get started in triathlon? And 7 years ago, tell us about how you got into the sport. And I'm interested too, because you were in Seattle and people don't like to ride bicycles in Seattle because it rains all the time. So
Well, they do, yeah, just when it's, not pouring down rain. Yeah, so, I always, I loved all three. I mean, I love to swim. I'll put a little asterisk by open water swimming because that's kind of, one of the areas that I'm struggling with currently. But I always loved swimming. Grew up in Southern California. My parents had a small boat in Dana Point, so I used to dive off the boat, do that kind of stuff as a kid. I sailed a lot as a kid, competitively too. So I think I always had that competitive nature in me. But up until the time I started doing triathlons, I just, kind of did like little 5Ks and, runs here and there with friends. I would go to the gym and work out. And so I, got interested. I thought, swimming, biking, running. I'm like, I could probably do that. And so there was a triathlon event near my house where I lived. I lived in a town called Sammamish, which is about 20, 25 minutes from downtown Seattle. It's more inland. And so they were having a triathlon event. It was, well, kind of a sprint. It was a 500-yard swim and a 4-mile run. And it was I think 15 something bike ride. And I thought, oh, I can do this. And what was so funny is that I had a mountain bike. So I literally did my first triathlon on this mountain bike with these big wheels. Of course, I knew nothing about triathlons at all. Um, so I borrowed one of my girlfriend's wetsuits, and she's like, oh yeah, you can do this. It's super easy. And I never did an open water swim ever.
And where was the swim? Was it in a lake or?
It was a little lake called Beaver Lake, which
Okay.
wasn't that big near my house. But I looked out, I was like, oh, that doesn't look too bad. So I never wore a wetsuit, just put the wetsuit on. I got about maybe, I don't know, 20 yards out, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I can't do this. I was feeling like I couldn't breathe. I was in this wetsuit. I couldn't even, and this lake in particular was like very dark, so I couldn't see anything. And I'm like, so of course I just completely panicked. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And it was just a small little, it wasn't even that, it was like maybe, I don't know, 500 yards or something. But I thought to myself, I'm out here, I might as well just do it. So I think I literally dog paddled the whole time. I was just doing this and, breaststroking and, putting my hand, my head up. I had no clue as to what I'm doing. And then I got on my, and then, got to the transition. And of course, I had no idea where my bike was because
Of course.
I was looking around going, well, I must be the only one that doesn't have a tri-bike or a road bike, which I didn't. I had this, bike with, mountain bike tires. And I'm like, well, yeah, that looks like my bike. And so I think I was literally probably one of the last people to actually find my bike and get my bike. So I do this bike ride, and of course it's super hilly, and I'm on this big, heavy bike with these big wheels. And I'm thinking to myself, and of course, I'm probably one of the last people that, is on the bike route. But I finished it. And I remember I come back to the transition. I'm like, oh my God, all the bikes are back. I'm one of the last people who was on the run. And I remember my husband, he was so inspiring. He's like, you got this, you got this. I'm like, okay, and I'm putting my shoes on, I'm thinking, I don't even know what I'm doing. And, but I ran the course, and I remember finishing, and I'm sure it was awful. I probably did every possible thing wrong you could do in a triathlon. But I just had a blast. I didn't care. I didn't even know what place I came in. I'm sure it was probably nice.
And it didn't matter either.
It didn't matter. I was like,
That's
oh my
right.
God, this is the coolest thing ever. And I was hooked, So at that point, I just, I just started, doing just little local events.
Before you go any further, I want to, while you're talking about your first race, there are so many things that you said that were really important, and that it's important for for the newer members of the club and the novices to hear. And that's the fact that, you went out in a swim, and 20 yards in, you couldn't breathe. I mean, 95% of us had the exact same experience. And then it's so important that you did your first triathlon on whatever bike was ready, was available to you. You didn't go out and spend $8,000 on a triathlon bike, and you don't have to. Yeah, so it's like that's important, and you had fun, and it's so great that you enjoyed it, had fun, and how you finished didn't matter. That was a real important thing that you said, so I wanted to make sure that everybody got that.
Yeah, and it's a great point. I never thought about it at the time. I think, you're just, what you don't know, and you go out there and you're just naive, and, you're just, yeah, I mean, and I think looking back, I just thought, oh my God, what was I thinking? Because now, I know so much more, and, I actually have a tri-bike, which I have a good story about my tri-bike. And I, up until that point, I had a road bike. But, I had never, I had done 5Ks. I think I did a half marathon at some point there, but it was a whole different feeling that I had. Like, I was like, oh my God, I just swam, biked, and I ran. And yes, the swim was super scary, even though it was in a little lake. There was it was nothing like Lake Mead or anything that, like swimming in Hawaii or in the ocean or anything like that. It was very calm. But I just think it was that just open water swimming is so different than being in a pool. And it's been, honestly, it's been one of my struggles and one of my big challenges. Mel is my coach, and she's been fantastic. And she keeps
Mhm.
telling me, you've got to get out to that buoy. And, I have a few times, but I'm still a little hesitant about being out, swimming, in deeper water. So it's something, I think me personally, I'm still working at, and, trying to gain that confidence and knowing that I'm a good swimmer. I got this. But
Well, that's great. Yeah, it's great to hear that. And then one thing that I like the fact that you realize you made all your a lot of mistakes when you first got started, and it's good for other people to hear because I mean, how do you learn? You learn from your mistakes. The bigger the mistakes, the better. I mean, not, in a sense, the bigger the mistakes, the more you learn. It's like, oh, that I'm not going to forget that one, So it's like this, you learn from your mistakes, you enjoy it and have fun, and you make mistakes but still have a blast. And you're proud. I'm glad you were proud when you crossed the finish line. It's different than running a race. Anybody can go run a race, but not everybody can swim, bike, and run and run after they bike.
yeah, that is true.
That is
Absolutely.
wonderful to hear your first
So
triathlon.
I agree. No, this is great. I love the story. But I'm curious, when you registered for that first race, did you what what caught your eye in the beginning? I know there was the swimming background, or there were some friends that were doing it, or was this something that you just said, I'm ready to try this challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. You like it, I loved swimming and I love biking, I love running, but I never had combined them, and and I heard about triathlons, but I think for me it was a confidence thing. I'm like, I can't do that. Are you kidding? Like I can barely run a 5K.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a matter of getting the confidence up. And I had a couple of my friends, uh, who were triathletes. And one of them was actually he was running like a triathlon group out of what was used to be Gold's Gym. I don't think they're
Mhm.
around anymore. Um, and so I had met him just by going to Gold's Gym. And so he and his wife actually talked me into doing it.
Oh,
And they just
neat.
want to do it, and I think I think had they probably spent more time with me, I probably would have been like, oh, I can't do that. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
But I think that they made it seem like, it's not that big a deal. You're in good shape. So I guess the being naive about it at first was probably a good thing,
Yeah.
because had I known all the preparation that goes into it, and, open water swimming and all that, I probably would have been like, so
Yeah.
there was a level of confidence, I think, that, and I definitely gained it after doing that race for sure.
Well, having the swim background certainly does help, but that is great to, for people to hear, as Bob already mentioned, that even with the swim background, open water swimming is a little bit different, and it does take some while to really get that skill and get that confidence. So that's neat that one, you were able to do it, and two, that you're continuing to work on that. All right, so you finish. It sounded like just a great accomplishment,
Mhm.
which is great. Even any distance race is such a great accomplishment. How soon after that did you sign up for your next one, and what did you sign up for?
Um, I think I just signed up for a lot of local
Mm.
ones. I don't, I can't remember the one I did after that. I think there was a lot. If you know the Pacific Northwest area, there's a lot of lakes,
Yep.
and so that's a great thing. Is that most of the tries that I did, were all in lakes. It was very calm. And I did sprints. I mean, in very, short, 450, 500, yard swims. So I did that for probably 3 or 4 years. And then my husband and I moved to Hawaii for a couple of years, and then we moved back. And when I moved back is when I decided, I had done a little sprint when we were living in Hawaii. And I thought, I really want to get better at this sport. I kind of feel like I've only done sprints. It's time for me to get out of my comfort zone, which is, not something I'm really good at doing anyway. But I thought, when I moved back, I want to join a tri group. And so this tri group they had just started. And this was in 2017, I want to say. I think it was 2016, 2017.
Mhm.
And so it just happened. It was like serendipity. It's like I moved back and got in touch with some of my friends. They're like, hey, we're starting a new tri group. And we'd love for you to be a member. So I joined, and that's, being around all of those athletes and talking to them and hearing their experiences and the races that they were doing, it was really inspiring me to go to that next level. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, what's that next level look like? Because I'd only done a sprint, I hadn't done an Olympic. And so I hired a coach, and she said, we can do this. We can get you into your, first 70.3. And I'm like, all right.
Wow.
Yeah. So my first one I did was Whistler, which was probably not a good one for your first one, because the swim, I was absolutely terrified. And I think part of it was, they had the Ironman course as well. So the Ironman participants were doing the swim course twice. 70.3 were just doing it, one time around. So I absolutely panicked. It was awful. I won't even go into the detail. It was just, the swim was just terrible. I think I was like one of the last people out of the water, but thankfully my bike, I was pretty good on my bike, so I was able to make up some time. So,
And
but
where
I'll
was
tell
that
you,
swim?
what was
Maria,
that?
where was the swim?
It was, I can't remember the name of the lake.
Which race was this?
This is Whistler,
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
2017. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I Blue Lake or something. It's whatever that big lake is that's out in Whistler.
Well,
They're not doing the races in Whistler anymore. So
I have to say, I love that you're being very honest and telling people about, struggling in the swim. But yet I also love that you're still going and you're still working at it. And
And
I
giving
think
that
that
up.
is such a neat characteristic to have, that yes, okay, so maybe that swim didn't go well. There's all sorts of things that can happen in a course like that. Like you said, you get other athletes, they're doing multiple loops, and it can get a little rough out there. But you're saying it in a way that doesn't come across as being very negative at all. It really sounds like that's your challenge, and that's really neat to see.
yeah, I mean, I if I maybe, when somebody told me one time, well, you should just duathlons, and I'm like,
Uh,
this is the sport, and I love the sport, and the swim is something that I know that I'll eventually get to a point in my journey, because I look at this all as a journey, where I'm going to go out there, I'm going to be like, yeah, I didn't panic, I wasn't nervous,
Mhm.
listening to Richard last week, he and I are friends.
Mhm.
He and I live in the same area, and we carpool to Mel's Swim for Triathletes. She has on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I've really gotten to know Richard, and I remember him sharing with me his experience, and how, nervous and how much anxiety he got, and he said something that kind of ingrained with me. He's like, you just got to keep going out there every single weekend and doing it. Even if you don't make the buoy, just getting out there, getting closer to it, and,
Mhm.
feeling comfortable and just floating. And that just kind of stuck with me. I'm like, yeah, I need to start doing that. And I did that this past weekend. I just went out. I didn't swim out with everybody, but I got to the buoy and I just kind of floated around, and I was like, okay, this isn't super scary.
Mhm.
I'll be okay. So, but it's yeah, I mean, everybody I think has, their points in triathlons, whether it's, some people struggle with the bike, some people hate running. But I think, it's just something that, you find whatever your weakness is. And I think that's why the sport is so amazing, is that you can find that weakness, and you can, look at it as an opportunity to just be a better athlete and say, okay,
oh,
I'm struggling in this area, but you know what? I'm going to overcome it. I may not be awesome. I'm not going to be like the best swimmer ever, but I'll get through the swim. And whatever that personal goal is. And like for me, my personal goal is not freaking out and being, anxious and nervous. It's getting through the swim and feeling like, wow, I got through that and I felt pretty good and I wasn't nervous. So
the common vein that I keep hearing is the fact that you are big on growth. You just want to keep growing. So you identify a weakness and say, I'm going after that weakness, and you keep going. So I mean, that's very virtuous. The fact that you're focused on growing all the time. That's awesome.
I'm trying. Yeah.
Uh, No, that is great. Okay, so now you get out of the swim, you did finish it, and you're in a 70.3 and you're getting on the bike and you're feeling pretty comfortable at this point. Now, are you on the mountain bike still, or what bike are you
No,
on?
no, I had to my bike at that point. Yeah. Well, I knew, given I think there was only a few other bikes that were in the transition. I'm like, okay, I have got to, like, put the gas on, because I wanted to finish, and thankfully I I did decent enough that they didn't pull me out, but I knew that I had to make up some time. So, but yeah, quickly before I go into the swim, yeah, my tri bike was actually given to me by um, my my husband's best friend's wife who passed away from
Mm.
pancreatic cancer,
Oh.
and she did I think 7 or 8 Ironmans on this
Mhm.
tri bike that I have, and it's an older, Quintana Roo.
Mhm.
I will never get rid of this bike.
Mm.
I just feel that every time, I'm sorry, I get a little, because I knew her. She was only 38 when she passed
Mm.
away. So I feel like every time I get on the bike, I'm riding with her.
Oh,
So
yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, that's where it is, racing has a deeper meaning and you're
Mhm.
able to
So many
connect
connections.
in a different way. And so that's really, really special. And that, helps on your journey as well with triathlon.
yeah, yeah. I feel like, when I think we've all been there where, we're on the bike and we're just like, oh God, we have 10, 20 more miles, 50 miles, whatever. And you just need that push. And so it's been several races where I'm like, okay, we got this.
Mhm.
So I talked to her, and so yeah, so that's how I got my tri bike. But before that, I ended up investing in a road bike. So I did a road bike for most of my like sprints. I did the road bike, but yes, I had a tri bike during my first 70.3,
All
thankfully.
right.
That's great. Great
You
story.
know, the one other thing, um, Maria, that I like to hear, and I like to have other people hear at the same time, is the fact that on a 70.3, you get, around 30 miles in, and it's like, hey, you do an assessment, things are hurting.
Mhm.
And it's like, and you have to actually talk to yourself and, assess the pain and address it and keep going. And, it's good for people to hear that it's not a walk in the park all the time, but you make corrections and keep going.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things I wasn't anticipating. One of the things and I had trained pretty hard. I mean, that's the one thing, I just didn't go into it. I mean, I hired a coach and I trained for about 6 months. Was my feet burning?
Mm.
Like I just, I had done, 60-mile bike rides in Seattle. And I'm like, so I remember when I got to the back part of the course, I think I was at mile 35. My feet were, I'm like, holy
Hmm.
wow, my feet are literally on fire. And I remember going to the aid station and just getting some cold water and just dumping them on my feet. So
Mm.
it's things like that that you don't train for. You just don't know. And sometimes things happen during a race and you're like, okay, well, I have to just adjust and
Mm.
figure out how I'm going to get through this. But yeah, that was one of the things I definitely wasn't
Yeah.
anticipating.
Thinking on the fly, though, that's good. Yeah.
So then what was you get off the bike now and you're ready for your first half marathon. Well, had you run a half marathon prior to
Oh, I
doing this?
had,
Okay.
yeah. No, and I had trained.
Mhm.
It wasn't pretty. I mean, it was hot. That's all I'll say. None of my races have been pretty. It's just like I did better in Coeur d'Alene, but it was just hot, and it was a little. That was the year that I don't know if you guys remember, but there was just a lot of fires in the
Mm.
British Columbia
Mm.
area, so it was just smoky, and I think I probably ran 4 miles and walked. And I
Mhm.
mean, I think, I don't know, I didn't have a great time, but I finished.
Yeah.
But I struggled and it wasn't pretty. And I was ready. It's so funny because I remember like being halfway through and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like,
Mhm.
it's just
Yeah,
like,
that's
I
right.
will never do this again.
Hmm.
It's like, I was thinking that at the time, like, I was ready to be done. Yeah.
So what got you through it then? Because that those are the dark spots. Like Bob was mentioning this, those dark spots that just about everybody has. So what got you through uh, that moment where you were saying, "Oh, why am I doing this?"
Yes. What was I thinking?
Yeah, well, a few things. I think one, having my teammates, a lot of my
Mhm.
teammates were there, so they were really pushing me and encouraging me. And of course, they had already, turned at this point. But they were just really cheering me on and saying, you got this, you're doing awesome. They knew it was my first one. But I think a lot of it for me is when I reach that point where I'm just hurting, I'm miserable, um, I just think, there's so many people that number one can't do this,
Hmm.
for physical reasons,
Mhm.
whatever. And I
We're really lucky. We are
yeah,
lucky.
exactly. I feel that, what, I have my health. I'm out here. I can do, I'm in the last leg of this, big race. But I do it to hopefully inspire people, like inspire my family and people that, because I've been there,
Good
I
for
was one
you.
of those people that just said, there's no way I can't do this. And I'm hoping that, just even though I may not ever qualify for Kona or the Worlds, but the fact that I'm out there, I'm just an ordinary person who loves this sport, and hopefully I can inspire other people to do it, because I think it's an amazing sport. And I think it not only has it helped me just from, an athletic standpoint, but I think it just helps in your life, and how even with work, I just feel that there are days where I'm exhausted and I'm like, God, I have another conference call, or I'm just dealing with somebody that I really don't feel like dealing with because they're just, so you can apply, I think, so much of what we do in racing to our everyday lives.
Mhm.
And I think it also just helps, build confidence in a very positive way.
No, I hear it
That's
and you
wonderful.
do. I mean, I'm hearing some of the challenges that you've been faced with, but I'm also hearing just the positive side of that, of just coming through those challenges and you feel just that much better and that much more confident. And so I think I agree with that's one of the great things about the sport. All right, so now you've done a 70.3, you've done sprints. Where do you find yourself drawn to in terms of distances and challenges?
Well, there's always that, that thought of, could I do an Ironman?
Mhm.
I would love to do an Ironman. I think, currently with my job, I just think it would be hard for me to
Yep.
train, because I have kind of a demanding job, pretty much a demanding job. It takes up most of my time.
Uh-huh.
But I think, I would love to do one at some point.
Yep.
I'd like to get a couple more 70.3s under my belt,
Mhm.
and definitely, be able to feel confident in going into the swim, and not, getting anxiety and everything else that, I get with the
Mhm.
swim. And just, having a good race, and feeling, like I was able to complete the whole thing and feel strong, finish strong. The one thing I can say is it's been very different training here than in Seattle. I mean,
Mhm.
I thought, wow, I'm pretty strong, I can do any race. And coming out here and training is like, it's like night and day. And I
And
really
why
feel that
is that? Are you talking about the hills or the heat or what?
all of it, yeah. I mean, and even swimming in Lake Mead, the training swims that we did were all in lakes, so it was very calm. Here, there are times where, I mean, last weekend, we had lightning and thunder, and
Yeah.
there have been a few times where it gets, the wind picks up and you get a little bit of the swells. And so this to me is, I think if you can train here, you can pretty much do any
Hmm.
race. I
Yep.
really think the terrain just, it prepares you for anything. So.
Oh, that's good. I want to ask you about the club though. How, with you've been with the club for about a year, what do you think of the club and how has it helped you?
Oh, everyone's been fantastic. I mean, I met you guys actually before I moved here. I don't know if you remember, but I maybe not. I was training for Coeur d'Alene and I came out here because my family all lives here, and I was actually staying with my mom. And I did one of your open water swims in 2018. You guys had it out in the lake.
Yep.
So I met all you guys then, and I remember thinking, wow, everybody was really nice. And I think you guys just are really just a great representation of what the tri community is. I mean, you're very welcoming. We have a mix of athletes. I mean, I think it's so great that you do this as well. I tune in and I watch, just all your, the spotlights that you guys do. And I think we have a great club. And I think
Yep.
all the work that, and the volunteers and all the work that, John and, Laura do is great. So yeah, I've been very fortunate and very happy to be a part of
Well,
the club.
it
So
is great to have you as a member, and I
Absolutely.
think it's important to know that you were one of the first members of your Seattle club. So, you're someone who definitely gets engaged And it has been great to have you join our community, and you're a big part of that. All right, so now we're almost out of time here, believe it or not. How about your proudest moment that you've had in your triathlon journey so far?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. Probably when I did Coeur d'Alene,
Hmm.
and um, I just remember feeling, I mean, it was just a great race. I remember the swim, I felt actually pretty good.
Mhm.
I think coming down the chute in any Ironman event is just, I just get tears in my eyes. It's just so emotional. I think Coeur d'Alene, I think was probably my most memorable moments because I just felt really good. I remember coming down the chute, I passed some people, and I was like, this is just so awesome. And so that was probably
It's,
my most
it's,
memorable.
it's an accomplishment, of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
That is great. And boy, just to hear your start in the sprint with a borrowed wetsuit, a mountain bike, and you just did it. And it really does. I can see how that just sparked your interest in the sport, and to see you continuing. So this is really, really neat to have you on
Yeah,
and hear more about that.
yeah, and it's great to hear about your focus on growing and working on the things that, you see that you can improve and still having fun though.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really fun. Thank you guys.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad we had a chance to meet your dogs before we got started too. So
Yeah.
you're a big dog person, and so thank you for rescuing the dogs, and that's such a big part of what you do. And so thanks for doing that effort as well.
Yep. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on tonight. And it was a lot of fun speaking with you.
Oh, you guys as well.
All right,
Thank you.
good
Take
night.
care. Bye.
Bye. See you, folks.